Hello and welcome to this Xeneta analyst briefing. I'm Phil Hennessy, Director of External Communications and Commercial Partners, and I'm joined by our Chief Air Freight Officer, Neil van der Waal, who is currently en route home from TPM in Long Beach. But we've been asked so many questions by our customers in relation to the escalation of conflict in the Middle East over the past few days that Neil has very kindly found the time to talk to us and share some of his insights on what's happening now, what could happen in the next few days, and how that might impact shippers in the medium and long term. So hope you're well, Neil, and thanks for finding the time. It's been a hectic few days, hasn't it, for everyone, I think.
It has been, yes, and good to see you, Phil.
Okay, let's get in there because I know a lot of our customers and people that will be watching this will be busy actually dealing with the crisis unfolding. So let's talk about what's happening in the Middle East, Neil, and impact on air freight in particular. First off, airspace closures and flight cancellations immediately following the escalation of conflict. We're looking at 16 to 18% of global air cargo capacity taken from the market, almost overnight or instantly. What can you kind of put that in some context, Neil, in terms of what that actually means in reality? Because it's huge, isn't it?
Well, I think the numbers hide actually the more dramatic impact it has, because on average 16 to 18%, you might think, oh, okay, quite a lot, but not that dramatic. But that's the average. It is very localized, this issue, and in certain markets, the impact is far more dramatic, I would say. And the key example is India, the most populous country in the world. A production facility for many shippers. Air freight capacity out of that market is dominated by Qatar, Emirates, and Etihad combined. And they are no longer able to serve that market. Well, that is nearly beyond belief. If you would have told people a week ago, Qatar, Emirates, and Etihad will not be serving the Indian market, that's reason nearly for panic. Put aside air freight, I think also the personal consequences in there. So it's that 16 to 80% means low single-digit impact in certain markets, and 60-70% in other markets. And in those markets where it's 50, 60, 70%, there I would expect rates, if we look back at what happened in COVID, where we saw reasons were very different, but a very abrupt decrease in capacity. We saw rates dip, double, triple, quadruple in certain markets. And I think that is likely to happen in these markets as well if the situation prolongs.
Yeah, and there's always, whenever I'm kind of helping our analysts to communicate during the kind of black swan events, I'm always really mindful of not, kind of following the hyperbole that you hear and sensationalism that you hear in the wake of these kind of events. But that being said, Neil, this is for air freight particularly, and I know it is an impact on ocean freight, but for air freight in particular, this is of an order of magnitude in terms of, it depends how long it goes on for, but the shock is, kind of COVID type of, supply chain shock, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm also not a sensationalist, but the number 1 and 2 global carriers from an air freight perspective, if I leave UPS and FedEx on the parcel side, they've been crippled. They were no longer able to serve. There are some exceptions, but overall, they're no longer to operate their services. That has a dramatic impact, I would say. Yeah. Also the uncertainty. because we do not know, how long this might take.
Sure. So we touched on rates there, Neil. So just to kind of get a summary there, on the affected lane, on the affected corridors, depending on how long these airspace closures last, then we're talking potentially doubling, tripling of rates in a fairly short space of time. But that's dependent on how long this actually lasts for, presumably.
Well, because when this happened over the weekend, the goods that were being ready to be transported, they already had an agreed upon rate. This was so sudden. But as of now, if you need to move something tomorrow, or it's very urgent, will likely be agreed because the fundamentals on the market have changed completely.
Yeah.
So I think the changes are happening now, and I would like to say that the industry always finds a way. Yes, this is dramatic, on many levels, but there will be companies who see opportunities here, try to readjust their schedule to, for lack of a better word, benefit from this. But it will come at a cost. It will come at a cost.
And just if you're a shipper that isn't using these transshipment hubs in the Middle East, your supply chain is and the price you pay is presumably still at risk as well, because shippers are going to try, as you say, they will find a way for high priority goods, and that volume will spill out onto other corridors potentially.
Let's take an example. Let's say a freight forwarder has a deal with Turkish Airlines. So they move through Istanbul, let's say between India and Europe. But if they now hear that the India market is doubling, tripling, they will try to benefit from that as well. So even if you are not, let's say, operationally affected by this, I think you will be commercially affected by this, because the airlines that are still able or will be able to serve these markets will try to maximize or optimize, maybe I should say, their benefits.
Yeah. Just looking at the kind of here and now, shippers who have goods on the ground at these transshipment hubs in the Middle East now, I mean, do they just wait? Is it just there's nothing they can do? Presumably, they just have to.
You're stuck.
You're stuck.
You're stuck. So these carriers will have stopped receiving shipments, but then they'll be stuck at, let's say, the freight forwarder. There you might be able to do something, but if they already have been handed over to the airline, I think you'll be stuck, or I don't have those operational details. Maybe they're trying to get them back and move them out, but it's probably such a chaos at the moment that I think that is less likely.
Yeah, and that's going to then presumably, let's say in the hypothetical scenario, the conflict is resolved. Wouldn't be wonderful, wouldn't it? But unlikely. But even if in that hypothetical scenario the conflict is resolved right now, that mess is going to take time to kind of unravel and resolve, and things just planes.
Rule of thumb, Phil, would there be 1 day a mess, 5-7 days cleanup?
Yeah. So that if we're going on for weeks, then there's a lot of days of cleanup there, isn't there?
The logistical mess, I think, from a planning perspective, is of a different order of magnitude. I heard that Qatar, of its close to 30 freighters, I heard that a majority of them are outside of Doha. So your pilots, where do you put them? So your planes are not where they want to be. Your staff is not where you need them to be. So before you have that all in a safe way back to normal, that's going to take a significant amount of time.
Yeah. So we've just covered if you've got goods on the ground now, you're unfortunately in a pretty impossible situation. What if you have high priority cargo that you want to ship next week, and the uncertainty, as we sit here now, we don't know what's going to happen next week, and you're a shipper, how do you approach that? You say we find a way, but what is the way, and how much does it cost?
So the shippers will not find a way. I think the shippers will have to pay for the freight forwarders to find a way. I mean, this industry has been, I would say, so effective over the last 10 years in dealing with these kind of situations. They will find a way, but it will come at a cost.
Yeah, hence the tripling of rates and such like.
Yeah, because I looked up the numbers on our platform before the crisis started. Load factors from Asia to Europe from many Asian gateways was around 80%. And these carriers connect Asia and Europe as well. So it was already 80%, which is our tipping point of a buyers and sellers market. Take away, 10% of that capacity, whoop,
yeah,
and you will have a run at capacity.
Yeah.
And when there are no, let's say, obvious solutions, I'm convinced charters will be discussed as we speak now. You have to look at the landing rights because you just cannot decide simply to start flying. There needs to be a right.
Yeah.
But that will then come at a much higher rate than we saw prior to the start of the war.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's an inevitable consequence of conflict. When we put trade and air freight, when we put it in the context of how important it is to the world at large, but it's more specifically those nations in the Middle East and India and the destination nations that those goods are going to, it becomes a target for hostile actors to disrupt those nations. That's unfortunately, we don't know how long it's going to last, do we? Because trade is in the crosshairs. We saw it in the Red Sea, didn't we? It is unfortunately, it's going to be vulnerable, I suppose. So that has to be a risk for us looking to the kind of immediate and near term.
Well, if you want to hit where it hurts, I mean the Dubai or Doha or Abu Dhabi airport, it's much more than an airport. It's the lifeline, it's the lungs of Abu Dhabi and Dubai and Qatar.
Yeah.
And I think will be very difficult to decide now it's safe, knowing that the adversary is so close by. And you would think at limited cost, they can keep the tension in the air by sending a drone or an attempt, once a week.
Yeah.
And then even if the authorities would say it is now safe, how will individual companies, individual captains, respond to that? So I think it's a very, in a way, you're quite vulnerable there because what is safe?
Yeah, I know it's a really concerning situation to say the very least. Mode shift, when we're talking about alternatives here, I'm presuming mode shift for ocean, for example, is just out of the question because it's just not going to deliver the speed and efficiency that air freight does.
If it's, you could imagine there will always be a way, and if you go to ocean, it might take 10, 20 days. Well, in 10, 20 days, you can circle the world, with air freight a couple of times. So no, I don't see that as as an immediate solution.
Yeah. Another question that we've been asked a lot by Xeneta customers is around Brent crude prices and whether that has a knock-on impact to jet fuel prices and whether we see that actually also potentially push up rates. What's your views on that side of things?
I think that the air freight rates, are a result of demand and supply for air freight, not so much a demand and supply for fuel.
Mhm.
And I think the impact of the reduction of capacity will be of a
Yeah.
different order of magnitude than the higher. Yeah, it will potentially bite into their margins, yes, but the prices will be driven by the reduction in supply.
Yeah. I mean, if rates are going to be doubling and tripling, then I suppose the jet fuel element of that is, I'm not saying
Will be
insignificant, but
it will be, yeah,
yeah.
I agree.
Okay, just quick one on this. Again, been asked this. Do you think the air freight rate increases could push up consumer prices for consumer goods?
Not a lot, I would think, because if we would see, air freight typically moves high value goods, and if you look at high value goods, if you look at the total, let's say, logistical production cost, the transportation costs are just a very small portion of the total cost. And if that portion increases, I think it will have a limited effect
Okay,
on the consumer goods.
excellent. Finally, what I'd like to do is finish off this video because I know you've got a plane to catch as well, haven't you? Back to Europe. But just to round this off, we're asked by Xeneta customers, take away the operational side of things in terms of how do they actually get their goods from origin to destination if they can't transship via Middle East. But ordinarily at this time of year, they will be looking to agree capacity for 2026 and agree new agreements with freight forwarders. What would you be your advice to them right now? Because they've got an operational headache, obviously, and they would ordinarily be deep in procurement as well.
Yep.
What would be your
So
advice, and how do you use data in that circumstance?
I've met several of our customers here at TPM in Long Beach, discussing also air, and my recommendation would be to postpone any longer term tender at the moment for these affected lanes. I mean, if you're let's see it in context. If you're moving across the Pacific, the impact there will be less profound than if you're moving, let's say, from Asia to Europe or from Indian subcontinent to Europe. So if your lanes are less affected by these carriers not able to fly, then I would say your business as usual with a slight nuance. But if you're on tendering lanes that are affected by this situation, well, let's call it a war. I mean, sometimes
It's a war.
it's a war.
It's a war. Yeah.
Then I would say postpone it. Yes, you will be vulnerable to the shorter market, but that is what it is at the moment. Any longer term rate that you might agree now could be far too expensive if this is resolved quickly, or far too cheap if this takes too long. And then what's the value of that? So my recommendation would be stay close to your freight forwarders, live with the uncertainty, and then once there is a bit more clarity, then set the scene for a longer price validity.
Yeah. And understanding that delta between the long and the short and the different market dynamics, even in this interim period. So when we say delay, it's not forget about it, is it? It's delay, but then know when the right time is to
for both parties.
Yeah.
Because if you know a ship, if you're asking, hey, freight forwarder A, can you give me a rate between India and North America for the next 12 months?
Yeah.
That is so dependent on how the situation will evolve, how quickly, that I think it's to nobody's benefit to have a paper agreement that is probably not going to survive reality.
Yeah.
For a long period of time.
Yeah, and also obviously blend the rate information that we just discussed with the operational data as well, because one thing doesn't exist without the other, does it? When we're thinking about the dynamic load factors and capacity, and they are married to the rates, aren't they? So it's getting that full picture of actually what's happening now and
that gives you context where the risk will be. But on these affected lanes, I would expect to see, the majority of the load factors well above the 80% with such a,
Yeah.
yeah, I can't call it unprecedented because we had COVID, but what a shock to supply chains. But we should a shock to these countries. Their lifeline. They're being, for the lack of a better word, nearly suffocated
Mm.
by this.
Yeah. 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 No, I mean, we get through one Black Swan event, let's call it what it is, war. And, it was effectively war in the Red Sea, wasn't it, from between 2023. You can call tariffs not outright military conflict, but it's geopolitical maneuvering and conflict and positioning. COVID, we've just seen it time after time after time. And I suppose if there's one thing we could say is that air freight has demonstrated how, along with data and intelligence, but air freight logistics professionals have got through these crises
And they
before,
will,
haven't
and
they?
they will again, and they will again, but it will come at a price, Phil, like I mentioned. But solutions will be made. The world will not come to a standstill.
Yeah.
They've proven it time and time again. But it is, and it is now my local time. It's now Wednesday morning, 8 o'clock. It was inconceivable that we would have this conversation, let's say 5-6 days ago.
Yeah.
And that's how sudden
Yeah.
it is. This is not a build-up that people could plan. No, this was, yeah, I would say literally overnight.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hopefully, Neil, the situation improves. And I think we should really wish our customers and viewers good luck in kind of getting through this crisis. And we're as Xeneta, we're supporting our customers, and whether it's through Neil and his analysts or the data and intelligence in the platform. But we play our part, don't we, in helping people through this. So that will continue.
And if there's any very specific questions, please feel free to reach out to my customer success team, and we'll be happy to help where we can. But we'll be closely, obviously, monitoring the situation.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, great. Well, thanks, Neil. I know it's not easy when you're at conferences and such like, but thanks for your time. It's been really valuable, and safe journey home from Long Beach. And we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Phil. Bye-bye.